Captain James Cook was a remarkable man from Great Britain. He was born in a small village, but he grew to become one of the most famous explorers in history. His skill as a navigator and a map maker was extraordinary. The British Royal Navy recognized his talent and gave him important missions. Cook was tasked with sailing to the vast, unknown Pacific Ocean. His orders were to observe a rare astronomical event, the transit of Venus across the sun. But he also had secret instructions. He was to search for the Great Southern Continent, a land that many people believed existed but no European had ever seen. His voyages would change the world's maps forever. The ship chosen for this grand adventure was a sturdy vessel named the Earl of Pembroke. It was not a sleek warship. Instead, it was a collier, a ship built to carry coal. This made it strong and practical. It had a flat bottom, which meant it could sail in shallow waters without getting stuck. The Royal Navy bought the ship and renamed it His Majesty's Bark Endeavour. They prepared it for a long and difficult journey. The ship was fitted with extra cannons for protection and special cabins for scientists and artists who would join the voyage. The Endeavour was a floating laboratory and a vessel of discovery, ready to sail into the unknown. In August 1768, the Endeavour set sail from Plymouth, England. Captain Cook was in command of a crew of 94 men. They sailed across the Atlantic, rounded the treacherous Cape Horn, and entered the immense Pacific. Their first major stop was the island of Tahiti. There, they successfully observed the transit of Venus, fulfilling the first part of their mission. This scientific achievement was significant for its time. After leaving Tahiti, Cook opened his secret orders and began the search for the southern continent. This part of the journey would take them to lands that were completely new to Europeans, testing the ship and its crew to their absolute limits. The Endeavour became famous because of what it accomplished on this first voyage. Cook and his crew meticulously mapped the coast of New Zealand, proving it was two main islands and not part of a larger continent. They then sailed west and became the first Europeans to chart the eastern coast of Australia. It was here that the ship faced its greatest danger. It struck the Great Barrier Reef and was badly damaged. The crew worked desperately to save their vessel, eventually managing to repair it on a nearby beach. This incredible feat of survival, combined with the vast new knowledge they brought back to Europe, cemented the Endeavour's place in history. After 3 long years at sea, the Endeavour finally returned to England in July 1771. The voyage had been a monumental success. The ship was battered and worn from its long travels across the world's oceans. It had sailed through storms, navigated dangerous reefs, and explored thousands of miles of unknown coastline. While Captain Cook became a national hero, celebrated for his discoveries and his leadership, the Endeavour itself received much less attention. The ship had served its purpose for the Royal Navy's grand exploration. It was no longer needed for glamorous voyages. Its days of exploring the far corners of the globe were officially over, marking the end of a significant chapter. The Royal Navy had other plans for the old collier. It was a functional ship, and there was still work for it to do, even if it was less exciting. The Endeavour was refitted and sent to the Falkland Islands, a remote British outpost in the South Atlantic. It was used as a transport ship and a store ship, carrying supplies to the soldiers stationed there. This was a far cry from its previous life of charting new worlds. The ship made several trips back and forth, quietly serving the needs of the British Empire. It was no longer the vessel of a famous explorer, but just another workhorse in the vast fleet of the Royal Navy. By 1775, the Endeavour was considered old and worn out. The Royal Navy decided it was no longer fit for service. The ship was sold to a private shipping magnate named James Mather. He likely did not know the full celebrated history of the vessel he had just purchased. To him, it was just an old ship that he could use for trade. He gave it a new name, the Lord Sandwich. Under this new identity, the famous Endeavour began the final and most mysterious phase of its existence. Its connection to Captain Cook and his historic voyage was slowly being forgotten as it was prepared for a completely different kind of duty. The ship that had once hosted scientists and carried priceless maps of new continents was now destined for a more common, commercial life. As the Lord Sandwich, it was intended to haul cargo for its new owner. The world was changing rapidly, and a new conflict was brewing across the Atlantic Ocean. The American colonies were fighting for their independence from Great Britain. This war would create an unexpected demand for ships of all kinds. Unknowingly, the old Endeavour, now sailing under a different name, was about to be drawn into this historic struggle, a final dramatic act far from the Pacific waters it had once explored. The American Revolutionary War created a great need for ships. The British Army required vessels to transport soldiers and supplies to North America. The Lord Sandwich, the ship formerly known as the Endeavour, was hired for this purpose. It was chartered by the British government to serve as a troop transport. In 1776, the ship sailed to America, filled not with explorers and scientists, but with Hessian mercenaries. These were German soldiers hired by the British to fight against the American colonists. The ship that had once expanded the British Empire through discovery was now being used to try and hold that same empire together through force. The Lord Sandwich arrived in America and was soon repurposed yet again. After dropping off the soldiers, the ship was sent to Newport, Rhode Island. At that time, Newport was under British control, and its harbor was a key strategic location. The British used it as a naval base. However, the war was not going well for them in this region. French forces, who were allies of the Americans, were preparing to attack Newport. The British commander, General Sir Robert Pigott, needed a way to protect the harbor from the powerful French fleet. He decided to create a blockade, but not with his fighting ships. The British plan was a desperate one. They decided to sink a number of their own transport ships at the mouth of the harbor. By scuttling these vessels, they could create an underwater barrier. This would make it impossible for the large French warships to sail into the harbor and attack the town. It was a drastic measure, a last-ditch effort to defend their position. The Lord Sandwich was one of 13 ships chosen for this final, sacrificial duty. Its days of sailing the seas were numbered. The ship was old, and its value was seen only in its ability to block a channel. In August 1778, the order was given. The Lord Sandwich, along with the other transport ships, was deliberately sunk in Newport Harbor. It was a quiet and unremarkable end for a vessel with such an extraordinary history. There was no ceremony, no recognition of its past glory. It was simply one of several ships sacrificed for a military tactic. For nearly 200 years, the story of the Endeavour ended there. It was believed to be lost forever, its wooden hull slowly rotting away at the bottom of the harbor, its true identity as Cook's famous ship completely forgotten by the world. For many decades, the final resting place of the Endeavour remained a complete mystery. While the ship was known to have been scuttled in Newport Harbor, no one knew exactly which of the sunken wrecks it was. The ship's identity had been changed to the Lord Sandwich, and the records connecting the two names were buried deep in British archives. It was not until the late 20th century that marine archaeologists and historians began to piece the puzzle together. They started a dedicated search, driven by the desire to find one of the most important ships in the history of exploration. This marked the beginning of a new chapter in the Endeavour's story. Researchers from the Rhode Island Marine Archaeology Project, or RIMAP, led the search. They spent years studying historical documents, including old ship logs and payment records from the Royal Navy. They managed to confirm that the Lord Sandwich was indeed the Endeavour. With this crucial information, they turned their attention to the waters of Newport Harbor. They meticulously mapped the seabed using sonar and other advanced technologies to locate the group of sunken 18th century wrecks. They identified a specific site where 5 of the transport ships, including the one believed to be the Endeavour, were scuttled. The process of identifying the specific wreck of the Endeavour from the others has been incredibly difficult and slow. The wooden timbers of the ships are fragile after more than 2 centuries underwater. Divers have carefully excavated the site, bringing up small artifacts and wood samples. They compare the details of the wreck, such as the size of its timbers and its construction style, to the original plans of the Endeavour. In 2022, Australian researchers announced they were certain they had found it, though their American partners at RIMAP urged caution, stating that more proof was needed. The debate continues, adding another layer to the enduring mystery. The story of the Endeavour continues to capture our imagination today for many reasons. It is a story of great adventure and groundbreaking discovery. It is also a story of how something magnificent can be forgotten and then rediscovered. The ship represents a pivotal moment in history when the map of the world was redrawn. The ongoing search for its final resting place reminds us that history is not just in books, it is a tangible thing that can be found and touched. The wreck of the Endeavour is more than just old wood. It is a direct link to Captain Cook and an age of daring exploration that changed the world forever.